So in general, if we're talking about very large firms, particularly firms that have experienced corruption in ways that can be captured,
Right.
AI is great. When we're talking small to medium firms, don't generate a lot of data, AI can be counterproductive. It can yield hallucinatory responses that could hurt individual people or hurt transactions or relationships.
Welcome to The Ripple Effect, the podcast that takes you on a journey through the minds of Wharton faculty. I'm your host, Dan Loney, and in each episode, we'll be diving deep into the inspiration behind the groundbreaking research that Wharton professors have conducted and exploring how their findings resonate with the world today.
Well, as we continue to hear that artificial intelligence is the technology that every firm should implement, our guest today questions whether that can be the case when you're thinking about things like anti-corruption efforts by countries and agencies around the globe. Pleasure to be joined here in studio by Philip Nichols, professor of legal studies and business ethics here at the Wharton School. He wrote about that question exactly in a recent article for the American Business Law Journal. Phil, great to see you. How are you?
Fabulous, Dan. It's always good to see you.
Good to see you as well. So I guess let's dig in right into the guts of this, because everybody thinks that every company needs to have AI in everything that they are doing.
Exactly.
How does potentially AI fit in or maybe not fit in and around the efforts to prevent bribery, corruption, et cetera?
Great question. To answer that question, we need to understand two things about corruption and two things about artificial intelligence. The first, about corruption, it manifests itself differently everywhere. The corruption you experience in one country is different than the other, in one industry, different than the other, in one firm, different than the other. And that means data is not fungible. Data is not easily translatable or usable from one to the other. The second thing to understand about corruption and compliance in general is that misbehavior, corruption, occurs in the shadows. People don't want to generate a lot of data about it, right? Two things to understand about artificial intelligence. In addition to it uses a lot of energy and it requires a lot of processing power,
Right.
It requires a solid model of what the world looks like, and it requires a lot of data.
Right.
Therefore, if we put those two things together, and not even talking specific about what we're asking artificial intelligence to do, but just whether artificial intelligence is viable with this particular realm of compliance.
Right.
We don't have the data and we don't have the model. And therefore, what we're likely to get when we ask questions of artificial intelligence is hallucinations or nonsense.
Right. And I guess to a degree, with the issue of compliance, then you have to bring in the point that the rules in Europe are different than what we see here in the United States and other parts of the world. And so we think about the use of AI as something that is global. We think about the ways of protecting from corruption as global.
Yeah.
Yet you have these different sets of rules in place.
Yeah, the European Union's rules regarding artificial intelligence really protect individual dignity, whereas the rules for the use of AI in North America, particularly the United States, are much looser.
Right.
And so using AI to investigate one of your employees, are they accumulating wealth surreptitiously?
Right.
You wouldn't be able to do that in Europe. And if you're a transnational firm, you really need to comply with Europe's, they're kind of like the gold standard of use of AI. And so there's a lot of things, like you point out, that we won't be able to dig into, investigate, etc., because that really would be an infringement on the dignity of the people who work with us and for us.
So a lot of what is also asked involves up-to-date process, up-to-date software, etc.
Yeah.
At least right now, it seems like up-to-date in the realm of what we're talking about is AI. It's taking that next step.
That's my concern. Someday, I have no doubts that someday new forms of artificial intelligence will be very useful. Empathetic or empathic AI, intuitive AI. But right now, most of our AI is either in the form of large language models or is it is self-learning and therefore can categorize and make a sense of large masses of unsorted data.
Right.
Neither one of those right now fits the things we need to do with corruption. And so the notion that, oh, we adopt artificial intelligence and therefore we're up to date and doing the best we can really doesn't work when we get into the weeds and think we want to solve these problems, not just put a little sticker on that says, hey, we're using AI.
But are there processes, components of what is being done now to try and prevent corruption, prevent bribery, et cetera,
Yeah,
where you see AI could have
absolutely.
a level of impact?
Absolutely. Two areas. One is areas that is in generally warning people. So we call that red flags. So sorting data. Yeah, your firm does this transaction, this action, whatever, a particular way for thousands of times, and then there's one that's different.
Right.
Well, that's a red flag. It doesn't mean it's necessarily a misbehavior, corrupt. It just means that someone should take a look at it and see why it's different. AI is great for that. And the other way that AI is really useful is when we do have huge masses of data.
Right.
So the Panama Papers, the Pandora leaks, etc., or an individual firm, Siemens, Walmart, right? These are corruption incidents of corruption that did yield massive amounts of data, and there artificial intelligence can be useful. So in general, if we're talking about very large firms, particularly firms that have experienced corruption in ways that can be captured, AI is great. When we're talking small to medium firms, don't generate a lot of data, AI can be counterproductive. It can yield hallucinatory responses that could hurt individual people or hurt transactions or relationships.
Is there a level of this, and when you think about the rules that have been put in via Europe around GDPR in the last decade or two, and they were seen to be at the forefront of the move to try and protect personal data, is there a way that you could see a region of the world, because they have kind of taken the steps forward, maybe finding a path sooner rather than later to implement AI to be able to use this in the process? Or are we still far away from that at this point?
I think we're far away from it in general.
Right.
Your question is a really interesting question, and it's a question that goes beyond just compliance or detection of misbehavior. Europe, China, and the U.S. all have very different approaches.
Right.
Which one of those approaches is going to yield the most accurate detection of misbehavior? And I think there's an argument to be made for Europe's approach, because unlike our use of, for example, AI in hiring right now, Europe's approach might lead to a better model, which is half of what makes AI work: model and data. And Europe's approach might lead to a better model. That's a really interesting question that we don't really know enough about. We're just a few years into this transition.
Yeah.
But there's a good argument for Europe. There's also a good argument for the U.S. in that, just letting people run wild and do whatever they want to with AI, might yield the magic bullet too.
So then from the same perspective, then when you think about how regulation plays a role in how companies operate, I guess to a degree, the unknown of AI that we still have in a lot of areas really still puts us in an unknown in terms of how it would impact with regulation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that I'm most concerned, the thing I wanted to experiment with and play with was, since AI seems to be the magic Band-Aid for everything in the world, and you're not up to you've got to have AI or you're behind. Is that true right now? And the answer I came up with is no. There's plenty of areas where AI is either not helpful or detrimental, and compliance, regulation is one of them.
Is that going to end up then leading us to kind of rewriting policy and regulation in some of these areas if we do get to a point of implementing AI?
Yeah, I imagine just like with the Industrial Revolution, rules changed because the world we work in and the world we live in has changed.
Right.
That in a number of years, the regulations, the rules for business behavior will be written with an eye toward the fact that most businesses incorporate to some extent, varying degrees, because by then we'll have a more realistic understanding, artificial intelligence.
So in the times that you and I have talked about these issues,
Yeah,
I think it's fair to say when you think about corruption, you're thinking about it at the business level, at the firm level.
I do, absolutely. I'm here at Wharton.
When you're when you're thinking about bribery,
Mhm.
it's more of a personal, one person to one person, two people to two people
Yep.
connection. So how does that difference potentially impact the thought process of using AI to kind of mitigate the issues around bribery?
Yeah. So if we go to the other end and talk about the use of artificial intelligence in government, in business-to-business transactions,
Yeah.
there is great potential. There's great potential for abuse.
Right.
There's great potential, particularly since AI can leverage at huge scales
Right.
for all kinds of misconduct. But there's also great opportunity for reducing or almost to nothing that kind of human interference and discretion that can lead to corruption. And the digital platform infrastructure in India and Aadhaar in India are great examples of technology. I mean, and here we're not even talking self-learning or whatever the AI bucket is,
Right.
but where technology has done exactly what you describe and significantly reduced low-level corruption, significantly increased the amount of money that people are entitled to from various government distributions that they're getting at the village level. So that at the other end, not the compliance end, but the government operation and regulatory end, yeah, there's potential for abuse, but there's also great potential for cleaning up corruption, which is a really neat story.
What would then some of the policies or rules you think that would have to be put in place in order to have that kind of effectiveness?
Yeah. One is giving people digital IDs. Right, we kind of jury rig that in the United States and in North America right now. We use somebody's cell phone number, the email address. But if you look at places like Estonia, where they just from the ground up, once they re-achieved independence, digital IDs, that opened up so much for working with technology, which eventually will include, of course, self-learning and artificial intelligence. You look at Aadhaar in India. Once you have that digital ID, even at the village level, it opened up access to the kinds of things that you're talking about. So that's one thing that policy countries are leapfrogging those of us who still use what's your mobile phone number.
Yeah.
That's just a really simple kind of thing. Now, how one approaches the mass leveraging, the depersonalization, all of these things with still some kind of form of justice and fairness, that's something that in the Industrial Revolution it took them 80 years at least to figure out. Hopefully it will be a lot faster. But we kind of need to see what intuitive AI looks like, what empathic AI looks like, before we start developing those kinds of regulations.
And maybe I'll throw in the cynic in me a little bit, but don't you also have to assume that if we are looking at ways to potentially implement AI to prevent this type of criminal activity,
Yeah,
the criminals are out there looking for ways to use the AI
absolutely.
to conclude this activity?
Absolutely, without question, and it does give them huge potential. The leveraging gives them huge potential for misconduct. The ability to crack other previously secure forms of communication or interaction, huge potential. So there's no question It's not that AI eventually it doesn't work now.
Right.
But even in the future, it's not a magic bullet. It's a tool that we need to use wisely. And we can never think of it as just, well, we're done now.
Yeah.
AI is taking care of everything.
Yeah.
It may become sentient. It may become whatever, but it's still a tool, not a magic bullet.
And I'll finish on this because even with the implementation of AI in so many firms right now, the expectation is you still have to have the human component in there as part of it. And I think you just kind of alluded to it,
Yeah.
that even if you're using AI in terms of trying to prevent this level of criminal activity, you still need to have the human component in there monitoring and helping go through the process.
Absolutely, without question.
Phil, great to see you again. Thanks very much.
Dan, always excellent to see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Philip Nichols, professor of legal studies and business ethics here at the Wharton School.
Thank you for listening to The Ripple Effect. We hope you found this episode informative and engaging. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review so that we can continue to bring you the best insight from the Wharton School.